My daughter Emma suddenly burst into my bedroom just after midnight. Her hands were shaking with fear, her face was pale, and blood was streaming down her arm. With trembling lips, she whispered, "Dad, someone entered my room. I saw them watching me sleep." My heart nearly stopped. I grabbed the gun from the nightstand and walked down the dark hallway. When the closet door opened, blood gushed out from whatever was hidden inside. Before I tell the full story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're watching in the comments. My name is Harold Mitchell. I'm 72 years old, a widower, and I live in a quiet neighborhood in a small town. After my wife Patricia passed away from cancer 5 years ago, life became quieter than I'd ever known. Emma, now 17, returned to her hometown to finish high school. My 14-year-old granddaughter, Sophie, chose to live with me after her mother, Emily, went through a difficult divorce and had time to learn more about her life. I wholeheartedly support them both. Although filled with memories of Patricia, this house felt so empty without her family. Emma and Sophie's presence here breathed new life into the house. Even as they had given her one. Emma was a good child, quiet and responsible, but she carried a burden no teenager should. Some nights she would wake up, come into my room, and complain that she couldn't sleep. I never ignored her, although she often tried to act like an adult. She reminded me that she was a child who needed the comfort of being alive. Sophie was younger, more fragile. She missed her mother terribly and had trouble adjusting to her new school. Some nights I'd hear her crying softly in her room, and I'd sit with her until she fell asleep. One evening, Emma sat with me at the kitchen table. She looked tired, but she smiled and said, "Grandpa, thank you for letting us stay here. I don't know what we'd do without you." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You don't need to thank me. This is your home as much as it is mine." That night, as we locked the doors and settled into bed, I felt a quiet sense of peace. The world outside might be unpredictable, but inside these walls, I believed we were safe. My biggest concern was making sure Emma finished school strong and that Sophie felt loved and protected. But safety, I would learn, can be nothing more than an illusion, and I'd learned that lesson in the most terrifying way possible, because just after midnight, the sound of hurried footsteps in the hallway jolted me awake. And when Emma burst into my room, bleeding, trembling, barely able to speak, I knew everything was about to change. When Emma burst through my bedroom door that night, I could see the terror in her eyes before she even spoke. Her whole body was shaking, her skin pale like all the blood had drained from her face. The cut on her arm wasn't deep, but seeing blood against her pajama shirt made my stomach twist. She grabbed my sleeve and whispered, her voice breaking, "Dad, someone's been in my room." I woke up and I swear I saw someone standing near the closet, watching me. The words hit me harder than any blow could. For a split second, I thought maybe she'd had a nightmare. Emma had been through a lot lately, and stress does strange things to the mind. But the way her voice cracked, the way her eyes kept darting back toward the hallway, she wasn't making this up. She'd seen something, someone. I pulled her close, trying to steady her shaken. "Emma, take a deep breath. You're safe now. You're here with me." But even as I said the words, I felt my own heart pounding. Safe. I wasn't sure that was true anymore. Before I could gather my thoughts, Sophie appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Grandpa, what's wrong? Why is everyone awake?" She froze when she saw the blood on Emma's arm. Her voice dropped to a frightened whisper. "What happened?" I didn't want her to panic, so I kept my voice steady. "It's all right, sweetheart. Your sister just scratched herself, but we're going to be careful now." Inside, though, I was anything but calm. My ears strained, listening for any sound beyond the three of us breathing. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked over to the nightstand and pulled open the drawer where I kept Patricia's old revolver. Years ago, when I was younger, I'd done my time in the service. Patricia had insisted I keep the gun after I retired, saying a man living alone should know how to protect himself. Now, it seemed that decision had been the right one. My hand shook as I picked it up, but holding it gave me a sense of control I desperately needed. Emma's voice broke the silence. "Dad, don't go in there alone, please. What if he's still here?" I looked at her, saw both my grown daughter and the frightened child she used to be. "I can't ignore this. If someone's in my house, I need to know. I need to protect you both." I told Emma to take Sophie back to my room and lock the door behind them. "No matter what you hear, don't open the door until I come back." Emma tried to protest, but she saw the look on my face and nodded. Sophie clung to her, wide-eyed, before they slipped back into the bedroom. Now it was just me, the gun heavy in my hand, and the silence of the house pressing in on all sides. I stepped into the hallway. The floorboards creaked under my weight. Every shadow looked sharper, every corner darker. I caught the faint sounds of the house settling, the ticking of the clock in the living room, the hum of the refrigerator, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still here, holding their breath in the darkness, waiting. When I reached Emma's room, I hesitated at the door. It was half open, the way it had been when she ran out. My pulse quickened. I pushed it wider and stepped inside. The air felt cooler, as if a window had been left open. Sure enough, the curtains stirred slightly. I noticed the window on the far side was cracked open just an inch or two. I moved closer and saw the muddy footprints on the wooden floor. My stomach dropped. They were too large to be Emma's or Sophie's, and they trailed from the window straight to the closet. That's when I knew this wasn't a nightmare. Someone had been here. Someone had been standing in this room, watching my daughter sleep. Now my breath caught in my throat as I stared at the closet door. It was closed, but not completely. The edge was slightly ajar, just enough to make the darkness inside seem deeper, more threatening. I raised the gun, my hands trembling, and called out in a low, firm voice, "If anyone's in there, come out right now." Silence. The silence was worse than any noise. My own heartbeat thundered in my ears. I took a cautious step forward, never taking my eyes off that sliver of darkness between the door and the frame. Again, I spoke, my voice shaking but loud enough to carry. "This is your only chance. Come out now." Still nothing. The quiet pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating. My mind raced. What if he was armed? What if he lunged at me the moment I opened the door? But what if I did nothing and he was still hiding there, waiting for another chance to hurt Emma or Sophie? I couldn't risk it. I tightened my grip on the gun and took another step closer. The smell of damp earth drifted out from the closet, mixing with the faint metallic scent of blood from Emma's cut. Every instinct in my body screamed danger, but a stronger force pushed me forward, the need to protect my family. I reached out slowly with my free hand and placed it on the closet door. My fingers trembled against the cool wood. For a brief moment, I shut my eyes, whispered a prayer, and then yanked the door open. The closet door swung open with a sharp creak, and I held my breath, the revolver steady despite my trembling hands. For a split second, the space looked empty, just coats hanging and boxes stacked on the floor. Relief started to creep in, but then I noticed the coats swaying slightly, as though they'd just been disturbed. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. I took a cautious step closer, pushing the coats aside with the barrel of the gun. That's when I saw a boot print on the closet floor, fresh and wet with mud, pressed deep into the wooden boards. Someone had been here. Maybe only seconds before. My throat tightened. He could still be in the house. I backed away slowly, closing the closet again, but never taking my eyes off it. Every instinct screamed at me that I couldn't just wait for the police. If the intruder was still here, if he was hiding somewhere else, I needed to act. Emma and Sophie were depending on me. I thought of Patricia, how she used to say, "Harold, when it comes down to it, family comes first. You fight for them, even if you're afraid." Her words steadied me. I made my way down the hallway, every step deliberate, my ears straining for the faintest sound. The house seemed alive with shadows. My breath came in shallow bursts, and my finger rested lightly on the trigger. When I reached my bedroom, I tapped gently on the door. Emma's anxious voice called out, "Dad, is it safe? Stay inside. Keep the door locked," I whispered back firmly. "Don't come out until I say." "Please don't go alone," she begged, her voice shaking. "I have to," I replied. "I won't let him get near you or Sophie again." For a long moment, I stood outside the door, torn between fear and determination. Part of me wanted to stay locked in that room with them until morning, but another part knew I'd never be able to live with myself if I ignored the danger. If he was still here, I had to find him. I decided to check the rest of the house. My steps were careful, my eyes scanning every corner. The living room was dark, only faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. I noticed the back door was unlocked. My blood ran cold. Had I forgotten to bolt it earlier, or had he slipped in that way? The thought of him moving freely through the same rooms where Sophie did her homework, where Emma and I sat talking at night, it filled me with a deep rage that cut through my fear. I locked the door quickly and turned my attention to the dining room. As I scanned the space, I noticed a chair slightly out of place, angled differently from the rest. I moved closer. There on the seat was a scrap of fabric, dark and torn, like it had been caught on something. I held it up in the faint light. It wasn't ours. That was all the confirmation I needed. He'd been here, moving around the house while we slept. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around, gun raised, but saw nothing. My chest tightened as the silence closed in again. Whoever he was smart, patient hand waiting. I went back to Emma's room, forcing myself to face the closet once more. I yanked it open again, this time with more force. Determined not to let fear control me, the coats swung wide, and a draft of cold air hit my face. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. At the back of the closet, a narrow panel was slightly ajar. It wasn't just a closet. There was a crawl space behind it. My entire body went cold. The idea that someone could have been slipping in and out of that hidden space, witting it, made my stomach twist in horror. Emma had been sleeping in this room, unaware that a secret passage led directly into her closet. I knew then that I couldn't wait another second. If I turned away, if I left it, I'd never be able to close my eyes at night again. I whispered under my breath, "This ends now." With the gun steady in my hand, I reached for the panel. My fingers brushed against the rough wood, and I pulled it open. The darkness behind it was absolute, swallowing the faint glow from the hallway. I steadied my breathing, every nerve in my body tense. I leaned closer, peering into the crawl space, knowing I was about to discover the truth that had been hiding in my house, and in that moment, fear and courage collided inside me, sharpening into one thought. Whatever was waiting, I had to face it. For Emma, for Sophie, for myself, to ensure the continuation of their crawling lives. Darkness looms before me like a deep pit, ready to swallow me. My pulse seems to pound in my mouth. My inner voice calls out to me, telling me to step away from the panel, to wait to call the police. But a stronger, harsher voice drives me forward. This is my home. Emma and Sophie trust me. If anyone is here, it's my responsibility to confront them before they harm my family again. I raise the gun higher and lean into the opening. If anyone is inside, I'm warning you. Get out now. My voice must be decisive, but I can feel it within. Silence pressed down on me, thick and suffocating. Then a faint rustling. The sound was so faint that at first I thought I was imagining it, but as my eyes adjusted, I detected the slightest movement. Like something trying to melt into the shadows deep within the sea. RAWLERS. My stomach churned. It was there. I gasped. Get out. I shouted, louder this time. A shape stirred. As if crawling out of a nightmare, a man emerged. His face appeared first. Thin, pale, eyes large and dull. His face was oily, and a crooked smile creased his lips, as if he were reveling in the fear etched into my face. He was wielding something. I saw the knife gleam in the light. My blood ran cold. He was hiding in my house, just inches from my sleeping granddaughter. He didn't look like their grandmother. I watch him at night. A roar rose in my throat. Anger overcame my fear. You've been in this house, I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. He tilted his head, grinning wider. Every night. She never knew. Sometimes I'd stand right over her bed, just listening to her breathe. I felt my knees weaken, but I steadied myself, gripping the gun tighter. Get out, I ordered, pointing it straight at his chest. Step out right now. For a second, he didn't move. His eyes darted between me and the gun, as if calculating whether I had the courage to pull the trigger. Then, in one quick motion, he lunged forward, swinging the knife. I stumbled back, adrenaline flooding through me, and raised the revolver. My voice ripped out of me. Don't move. He froze mid-step, the barrel inches from his chest. His smile faltered, replaced with a twisted scowl. From down the hallway, I heard Emma scream, Dad, what's happening? Stay in the room, I shouted without turning my head. My entire focus was on the man in front of me, his chest rising and falling rapidly, the knife still glinting in his grip. My hands trembled, but my voice was steel. Drop the knife. For a moment, it seemed like he might resist. Then, with a sharp clang, the blade hit the floorboards. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. I forced him backward into the light, keeping the gun trained on him. As he stepped into Emma's room, the stench of sweat and dirt clung to him. That's when I noticed the strap of a bag slung across his shoulder. I ordered him to drop it. He sneered, but obeyed, letting it fall. Emma had come to the door, despite my warning, her face pale. Sophie clung to her leg, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dad, is he the one? Emma whispered. I nodded. He's the one. With my foot, I nudged the bag open. My stomach turned. Inside were pages of a notebook filled with drawings, sketches of Sophie sleeping, notes about when Emma left her room, even details of my nightly routine. He'd been watching us for weeks, maybe months. Emma gasped, covering her mouth. Oh my God. The man's voice was eerily calm. I just wanted to be close. To see her. She doesn't know how much I care. My voice cracked with fury. You broke into my home? You hurt my daughter? You hid in her closet like a monster. Police sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Emma must have called them the second she heard my shouts. Relief surged through me, but I didn't lower the gun. Not yet. Not until I saw him taken away. The man glared at me, his calm demeanor cracking into something darker, more unhinged. She'll think of me. She'll remember I was here. I stepped closer, the gun steady. She'll forget you. She'll remember her father and her sister protecting her. That's all she'll remember. Moments later, the police burst through the front door, weapons drawn. They wrestled him to the ground, cuffed his hands, and dragged him away as he shouted nonsense, his voice echoing through the house until it finally disappeared into the night. When the door shut behind them, my knees buckled. Emma rushed to me, wrapping her arms around me as Sophie sobbed into my shoulder. The weight of what had just happened hit me all at once, the fear, the fury, the relief. It came crashing down. But above it all was one thought. We were alive. The nightmare had been hiding in our home, but we'd faced it, and we'd survived. The house was quiet again after the police left. But it wasn't the kind of quiet I was used to. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, filled with the echoes of what had just happened. The closet door hung open, the crawl space still gaping like a wound. The smell of the man's sweat and dirt seemed to linger in the air even though he was gone. Emma sat on the couch, pale and trembling, holding Sophie tightly in her arms. Sophie buried her face in her sister's shoulder, her little body shaking with sobs. I stood there for a long time, still gripping the revolver, my knuckles white, unable to let go. When I finally lowered the gun and placed it back on the table, the weight of it left me feeling both empty and exhausted. I sat beside them, pulling Sophie into my arms. Her tears soaked my shirt as she whispered, "Grandpa, he was really in my room. He was really watching me." I swallowed the lump in my throat and kissed the top of her head. "Yes, sweetheart, but he's gone now. He'll never come back. You're safe." The words were steady, but deep inside I was trembling. I didn't know if I'd ever feel safe again. Not in the same way. Emma looked at me, her eyes glassy. Dad, I should have noticed. I should have listened when I felt something was wrong. I thought I was just being paranoid, but her voice cracked. I failed to protect her. I took her hand firmly. Don't you dare blame yourself. None of this is your fault. You did everything right. You came to me. You called the police. You saved your sister. We protected her together. The three of us sat like that for a long time, clinging to each other as the night slowly gave way to dawn. The golden light of morning spilled into the room, but instead of comfort, it only showed the damage more clearly: the footprints on the floor, the open window, the scraps of paper in that man's bag. Every reminder was proof of how close we'd come to losing everything. The police returned later that morning to take statements. They told us the man had been squatting in abandoned houses nearby. He'd watched us for weeks, slipping into our home at night through the unlocked window. The notebook they recovered revealed his obsession with Sophie, his drawings, his writings, his detailed notes about our daily life. Hearing this made my stomach turn. The thought that he'd been lurking in our house, watching from the shadows while we slept, made me feel violated in a way I couldn't put into words. That day, I had every lock replaced. I had the crawl space sealed shut and reinforced. I walked through every inch of the house, checking windows, doors, and closets until I was certain there was no way in that we didn't know about. Emma helped, her hands still shaking as she screwed new bolts into the frames. Sophie followed me everywhere, refusing to leave my side. I promised her over and over again, this house is safe now. No one will ever hurt you here again. But the truth is, safety is never something you can guarantee. It's something you fight for every day. That night, as I lay in bed, sleep refused to come. I thought about Patricia, my late wife, and how proud she would have been to see me stand my ground. Fear had nearly paralyzed me, but love gave me the strength to protect my family. I realized then that courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about facing the fear anyway. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Sophie began to heal. Slowly, Sophie returned to school, though she still insisted on sleeping with her door open and the lights on. Emma grew more protective, checking every lock before bed, sometimes twice. And me, I carried on, but something inside me had changed. I no longer took the silence of my home for granted. I listened more carefully. I noticed small details, and I trusted my instincts. One evening, as we sat together at dinner, Sophie asked, "Grandpa, why do people do bad things like that, man?" I thought for a moment before answering. Because sometimes people are broken, and they make choices that hurt others. But what matters is that we're stronger than the fear they try to bring into our lives. We faced him, and we won. That's what you remember? Her small smile gave me hope. Looking back now, I understand that the terror of that night left scars we'll always carry. But it also left us with something else, a deeper bond, a stronger sense of family, and the knowledge that love can give us courage, even in the darkest moments. I'll never forget the image of that man in the crawl space. But I'll also never forget the sight of my daughter and granddaughter safe in my arms, alive and protected. To anyone listening to my story, remember this. Danger can find its way into the most ordinary places, but so can courage. Don't ever doubt your strength to protect the people you love. And before you go, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story.